Chapter 1. Cut yourself some slack. When I bought my first property, going abroad, the EasyJet, gym, Netflix lifestyle didn't exist. Kirsty Allsop, clueless TV person. These sorts of comments have been near constant since millennials came of age. Essentially, the older generations created a load of technology that made our lives easier and more exciting, then criticized us when we used it. You have probably seen the many complaints about the overconsumption of avocado toast and chai lattes that are used to explain why our lives are not conforming to their version of what we should achieve. The problem is that you have been told you should want what they think you should want so many times that you actually want it yourself now. But the world that you live in is nothing like the world that your parents and grandparents grew up in. I mean, back in their day, it was just toast and coffee, for one thing. With this new world of opportunities, why does it feel harder than ever to thrive? The reason is that it is harder. What the hell is going on with housing? Let's assume for a second that deep in your heart you long to buy your first property. You have dreams of one day owning a cottage with a river that runs through the back garden, and getting that little flat close to work is the first foot on that ladder and one small step closer to that dream. Buying property is a national obsession in the UK. As soon as you hit your 20s, someone will ask you at least once a week if you have bought a house yet. It is low-level indoctrination, and even if you want to spend your life checking out the world's top surfing spots, eventually you will succumb and start saving to get your foot on that first rung. But more on that in Chapter 6. Back in the 80s, the average house sold for around £19,000, with the average salary sitting at £6,000. It is hard to imagine that it was possible to live on such a small income, but the price of many other daily essentials was lower too. Fast forward to today, and the average salary sits at around £30,000, but the average property price is £274,000. This is over 9 times the average salary. Back in the 80s, average property prices were around 3 times the typical yearly wage. Therefore, buying houses is more expensive now. I remember scoffing at my parents when they told me how little they had paid for their first house. They did a lot of backtracking about how my dad's wage was only £10 a week at that point, so it was all relative. At the time, I believed that, and kept my thoughts about how I wished they'd bought a couple more houses at those prices to myself. It wasn't until I was talking to my dad about how I was proud of my husband and me for paying off significant amounts of our mortgage that I realised the true extent of how my parents had lucked out with the housing market. When I said that we only had £85,000 left to pay on our mortgage, he piped up with, "I don't think our mortgage was ever more than £60,000. This was when I saw the reality of the situation, as their house now is worth more than double, probably close to triple what my house is worth. On top of that, it wasn't that long ago that they finished paying the mortgage off. I'm not bitter. If anything, I'm jealous, but more understanding by our boomer relatives of the realities of homeowners in the present would be appreciated. Your savings aren't all right. House prices are just one area that has changed dramatically. Savings are another where it has become harder for younger generations to thrive. Interest rates on savings have never been known for being great at generating a healthy return on your cash, but as a minimum, you hope that you might earn enough to combat the effects of inflation. This held true for most of the 80s, 90s, and even the early noughties, when average savings account interest rates beat or, as a minimum, matched the rate of inflation. However, since the 2008-2009 recession, there have been only 2 years when this has been true, thanks 2014 and 2015. For our parents, saving meant that their money would at least in some way be working for them. It would earn interest, and when they came to spend it, it would